All right, welcome everybody. I'm just ending the show officially, and I've done that. And now you guys are. So I have an admission to make to Deborah. I'm
What?
so upset. I'm so upset. I was off my game, and I'll tell you why. And
Why?
you're going to be upset when I tell you as well.
What did we forget?
No, I didn't forget anything, but your your I think you called him mentor, Harry Cohen. I'd arranged for him to come onto the show to surprise you. And I don't know what
Oh,
happened to him. I
really?
spoke to him today. We did a whole tech check. He was on board. He was meant to come on at exactly 5:30. And that's why I didn't dive into the book and the whole
Oh,
thinking, because I wanted him to introduce it. So
oh
now
my God. I'm
I know. So
devastated.
anyway,
Can
that's
you
why
get
I'm
him to come
upset.
to the after show?
He was going to.
To the after show.
It was funny. He basically said all he wanted to do was just come on and say hi to you and then jump off. And he didn't want to take any of the light from you, any of the focus on you, which is true to form.
True to his book.
But
Yep,
but
definitely.
he is gonna be coming on the show in December to talk about the book,
Oh,
and
fabulous. That's great. Good.
and you might have to Zoom bomb him this
Yeah,
time.
that's what I was going to say. That's a good idea.
Okay. Yeah, let's do that.
I don't know what happened. I guess something
I just
came up.
texted him, so maybe, yeah, I don't know. Huh. Although I
But
missed a bunch of calls, but
he's just absolutely wonderful. What a great guy.
Jan.
What a great guy. All right. Well, listen, we have Deborah from GM, and we got Ben Taft as well. Ben, I'm gonna gently encourage you to come or to decloak and join us. You're very welcome to be part of our little family here. There he is. Hey, Ben.
How you doing?
I mean, with a beautiful face like that, how can you not be on camera?
Oh, flattery will get you everywhere.
he's throwing sunshine your way. That's sunshine.
There's a lot of light. May there always be light in all directions. But I will hand off. I know, Phil, you had a long question, and I'll let you guys introduce yourselves and hang out with Deborah a little bit.
Sure. Can you read it? Because I don't have it handy. Hold on.
I mean, I certainly can. It was all right. So you said, has curtailed mobility in the pandemic allowed for any corporate reflection to temper our technical evolution and arrive at that baseline reminder that, quote, the freedom of driving, close quote, in its purest form is about human control and not handing over functions to satellites, computers, AI, and content sellers to further captivate the experience?
Okay.
This was more of a just to be a little bit of the contrarian and take a philosophical approach to. I'm not in any way suggesting these advances and these technical and cultural advances aren't wonderful, and we should have the choice, right?
Yeah, and I think that's exactly what we're looking at. Well, there's two things. One, I think that we are our motto is really advancing a safer world for all. So the for all means in many different formats, recognizing all those different needs. However, when we talk about safety on the road, so I don't know if you've had an opportunity to try Super Cruise. It is going to be coming to many more of our vehicles, and that's the no hands, no feet driving is what I like to call it. And the first time I tried it, that was sort of, and I think a lot of people have this reaction, wait a minute, I'm letting like someone else or the machine drive the car for me. After I tried it, what I didn't realize is the amazing freedom actually that gave me. It gave me more energy, less stress. I spent a lot of time living in LA and in Chicago, where you want to be in your own personal vehicle to get places because it's more convenient, except the drive is so stressful. This completely changes that whole aspect. So I think that's what we're looking for. How do you have the right kind of engagement? how do you enable things that, one, can make the world safer overall, but still also allow that ability to turn on and off, and depending on what you need. And so I think we're learning through all of it. And at GM, we're guided by in really making sure that you as the human are safe. And that's what guides us in how fast we go, how sometimes we don't go as fast as we could because we don't think it's as safe as it should be. And we want to work all those things out. So that's the perspective.
Great.
I have a question about how that works. And thanks for that great show, Deborah and Joseph. It was, there's so much to it. The question I have is, when you activate that technology, you're behind the wheel, you're not in the back seat, correct?
Correct.
So what does that do to other drivers on the road looking at you, not paying attention to the road?
Well, if you use Super Cruise technology, actually it has facial recognition. So right now, because there are a lot of other human drivers still, you have to be paying attention to the road. And if it notices within a certain amount of seconds that you're not, the system will give you flash warning lights. It will, have haptic messaging on your seat, et cetera, and it will turn off the Super Cruise capability. So, and that's what I mean by let's take it at the right pace in the context of what else is happening on the roads and where all the other automobile levels are.
I really like this idea. Oh, hey, Deborah, I'm a philosopher who just drops in all the time here. I loved the session today. In fact, I took a lot of notes, and they've got cars and hearts and all kinds of things on them. Very good. Posted on Facebook already. I really think of that kind of technology in a semi-utopian rather than anything like a dystopian way. I think, Phil and I can always strap on our jetpacks or find our demolition derby tracks when we want to, but for the necessities of travel to be a lot safer seems to me to be a great thing. Let me just ask you a quick question though. I've always admired GM. My first nice car was a car Winnie the Pooh bought for me. It was a white Cadillac that my students at Notre Dame call the Pooh-mobile. And I wrote a book years ago called If Aristotle Ran General Motors, all about the kind of the right values to run any company. And you guys just seem to be moving so much in that direction of what the Greeks would call wisdom and virtue, and seeing your purpose far beyond the narrow confines in which we defined business in the past. I wanted to ask you, with that in mind, what do you think is the biggest challenge you see yourself facing or the company facing as we move into the next, say, year or two? So not a huge time frame, but kind of a more immediate to intermediate time frame. What things challenge you now?
Great question. And we could talk a lot about that. But I think the biggest thing when you're talking about transformation at this scale, the first big challenge is convincing people that we can actually do it. And even internally that, because you're, making a big bet. Cadillac is going to an all-electric future. Their first vehicle is the Lyriq. We've announced it. They've put their stake in the ground. And I remember the first time we talked about that, people were like, what are you kidding? How can we transform like that? But as you see the case for it and where we all need to go, and you see climate change and, you see these aspects, we know that we have to change faster. And we know the reason we do the 3 zeros, zero emissions, zero crashes, zero congestion, is because we also know that that as the automobile industry grew over the last 100 years, some of the growth caused those things.
Yeah.
So we also feel an incredible responsibility, if we really believe we're supposed to advance a safer world for all, that we have to take control of that and do that. So I think that's the first thing, making sure that all of the team really is absolutely aligned on that and is pushing as hard as they can, because that's when the creativity comes out. And then the second thing, as I mentioned tomorrow in the speech, it's not, there's a lot of issues. There are legal issues. There are, regulations. There are all kinds of things that the world needs to address to help make that future a true reality. Yeah. So it's not just us, it's us working with stakeholders across the board on the importance of that and our ability to continue to try to influence change. So that's what keeps me up at night.
That's a good answer. I mean, it is a big change from tickling the fancy of the customer to transforming the world. And that's a big leap. And yet that's the kind of purposiveness that made Steve Jobs, so that he could overcome all the things that would have held back someone with his personality in life. And yet that dreaming big about changing the world was what drew so many great people, what drew out their greatest endeavors. And I think seeing a company like yours moving in that direction is such a powerful thing, and gives the rest of us hope that we philosophers aren't out there, in the wilderness preaching these values, but you guys who can do something about it are going to make a difference.
Yeah, and I think another point, and I've done this at several stops on my career, is that, it's possible to show that a legacy company can do that and affect that change.
That's
and take
right.
the things like acknowledge everyone always needs to change. I know in my personal growth, I need to change all the time. There's plenty of things to get better at consistently, no matter how old I am. And a company, it has the same thing. And I think the ability to really look honestly at that, know what is good about the company. I think that came through when we did the ventilators. Mary Bauer got a call that the United States needed ventilators, and 18 days later, we were actually producing ventilators in 18 days. I mean, like that's using the skill sets of our people, and who volunteered. Yeah, who volunteered their time. Like one guy was about to retire, and he's like, "No, this is important, and I have knowledge and expertise that can contribute." And we saw so many of our team members do that, and then we made millions of masks, and because we had to. And so I think seeing that come out and showing that a company can keep those core strengths that they've had and yet transform themselves and hopefully make the world a better place is really worthwhile work.
Yeah, that's great.
Deborah, if I may ask you, will the new cruise technology be affordable to the average American driver?
The Super Cruise technology? Is that what you mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, as you know, we're on the technology curve. So our goal is to be able to make sure that we launch these technologies and then make them available to all. So as we go down that curve and we get more scale, yes.
Deborah, I have a marketing question. What the phrase you used, I think it was something like "make the world a safer place for everyone," or
Advancing a safer world for all.
That's not a tagline. That's a positioning, correct?
Correct. That's
So
what we think of when we're thinking about what are we really trying to do with all of this. That's the end goal.
Would you say that's your brand position then?
Yep.
So what was the process on changing from what your former brand position was to this one? How long a process was that at such a giant company? I'm trying to wrap my mind around your position and your department getting that through.
It was definitely a collaborative effort. I think we have this vision that we wanted to be grounded in what makes GM tick. And as I say tomorrow in my speech, most people don't know this, but we actually start every meeting with a safety message. Why do we do that? Because it shows that we care for each other, that we're thinking about it. And when I first got to the company, I sort of said, why do we have these safety messages? And when the team started explaining that to me, I thought, oh my God, that's a fundamental differentiation. No other, and I've been at several companies, no other company does that. So we started there. And then of course we went through the whole research where you're looking at what are your strengths, what are your legacy strengths, how's that interpreted today, how can that be translated to what the world needs and what our consumers are looking for. And we went on a very long journey of that. And I think the key for me of that statement is that we acknowledge that we can't change the whole world, but what we're driving to and what the GM company through all of its brands is driving to is really continue to advance that safer world for all. And I think safety has taken on a whole different meaning as we've gone through Corona and COVID and all of these things. And as we're looking at inclusivity and racial systemic injustice. And, so the whole idea of what does safe mean for us as people, that has really expanded the meaning. And it was actually in the core of what Mary has been leading at GM of why we start every meeting with a safety message. So it all sort of came around.
It's great that that it isn't something that marketing created, but is, from a core foundation. That's usually when it succeeds.
I mean, I started, in the soliloquy, I kind of teased this idea that, Tesla refers to itself as a software company and Toyota a mobility company. And that just seems so, safe and let me not use the word safe, expected, and also like so functional. But it became clear to me in talking with you that GM is a safety company. And that to me just hit me over the head as you were talking, especially when you said that beautiful positioning, and when you actually came up now with that cultural connection. You can see, it answers the question that it's not positioning, even it's not a tagline, it's a purpose, and it's a North Star, and it's something that GM has. Has history and heritage and equity and gravitas around. I think it's exciting to be even asking that question. What does safety mean? What does safety mean? Safety is the ability for us to talk about things like being anti-racist. Safety is the ability for me as a white man to be able to say, I'm not happy about the fact, I forgot to mention this, and I haven't even shared this with anyone. I went back over 130 guests, and I looked at the male to female split of my guests. So Deborah, what do you think the split was?
25% female.
I wish.
Bob, how can I even respond to that? Well, considering we know that the national average is what's at 6.4, it was 17%.
You got some work to do.
I do, and I made a decision, which is
we've been nudging them for a while.
But it wasn't. It was nothing that I did overtly, explicitly, consciously. In fact, what happens when people schedule is they just schedule. So they schedule on any given day. But now what I've done is I've now taken an explicit step, which is to say there will be no weeks where I have 5 males anymore.
Awesome.
So if it schedules that way, I'll go to the 5 and I'll say one of you has to move, and that's the way it starts. And so it's a small commitment, and it's not just about male to female. It's with respect to representing different perspectives, cultures. Making sure also that numbers reflect society by and large across the board. Even though I come from a business and an industry that might not necessarily reflect it at that level. But I just wanted to share that because that was what I did in order to make that commitment. And in context, Deborah, of saying I have to be able to feel like I'm in an environment, to be a safe enough environment to say, this is my journey. I'm not perfect, but I'm trying.
That's awesome. I love it. And if we all just, get to a little bit of that and start realizing what are the behaviors that seem so natural to us that are driven because, stories we heard or thoughts that were put in. So I think if we all go on that, the world becomes really, really so much better.
Yeah, that's true. There are all these books recently that have been making a big difference psychologically for people with titles like Tiny Habits or Atomic Habits. I think it was a guy at Stanford who did the book Tiny Habits. You can make small changes that have big consequences. And so good for you, Joseph. I mean, I think that's wonderful statement of self-awareness and sort of your trajectory of learning here and how you can make a difference for good in small ways that end up being big.
It's very cool.
Well, thank you. And thank you all for, pushing me too, because you've all been part of this family. I also want to just echo 2 points that I heard Deborah say, which is, I'm like a bit of a broken record sometimes, Deborah, because I repeat these things as well, which is when you've done this across 125, things that are different jump out at you, and it's obvious. It's not even subtle. But I loved this quote of yours, which was the most important or the hardest, I forget which one you said, of transformational change or this journey is convincing people that you can do it. And that begins with your own employees and your own team and talent. And I think that's a phenomenal point in terms of being able to, really kind of recognize that there's credibility and trust, and in terms of saying, hey, listen, we don't have all the answers, but we're going to figure it out together. The other thing is the ventilator story. We all sit back, and I'm talking about people, citizens, and we see the news from the New York Times perspective or CNN's perspective or Fox, whatever perspective, about the Defense Production Act. And we don't actually even think about the perspective from the corporation. Whether the corporation, we have no idea whether the corporation was ready, willing, and able from day one, or whether they were, the Defense Production Act almost implies that companies are being forced to do this. But we also don't think about the people and the talent and the ability to change course and pivot, and someone coming out from retirement. I think that's a story that we need to hear more of those stories, and realize that what happens in these corporate walls, because often we've never known, it's always been opaque. Deborah, the whole theme of transparency versus opacity. I love those stories because those stories that uplift us all.
Two things, Joseph, if I could just say something real quick. My daughter discovered last night that she and my granddaughter can be lifetime members of the Rosie the Riveter Society, because my mother was one of the riveters, known as Rosie the Riveter, at Glenn L. Martin Aircraft Company in Baltimore, Maryland, 1943. My mother put rivets in airplanes and fussed at all the other riveters. Don't you know our boys are going to be in these planes? Do a better job than that, she would say. And so the whole idea of defense production, the whole idea of companies like Martin Aircraft being able to gear up for, in their time, the war effort, and the women, the component of what we were just talking about, the role of women in all this. Our family has a special form of pride that my mother, left the telephone company in Durham, North Carolina, to go make airplanes for the war effort, and my father was already there doing it. So it does give you hope that when women enter into fraught circumstances, and, in our time of divisiveness and tumult, that's usually a sign that new truths are about to arise and shine in the world. It usually comes out of tumultuous circumstances. And with women coming in and playing a bigger role, I think it bodes well for the way this is all going to work out.
Yeah, I do agree with your point. I think that you can't have change until you're forced to recognize, you've got to have the recognition. And it's true, even though these are very, disparate times, we all didn't recognize all the roles we were playing.
Yep.
So
that's right.
So we are coming.
Who knew that a show about hope, optimism, and what else, and a little marketing would bring up topics like this. So this is the wonderful thing about, in a time of isolation, when we get together like this by Zoom. I never would have guessed a year ago that these kind of conversations could happen, and you could meet people like the people on the screen. It's just become an amazingly enriching thing, a sort of an oasis of intellectual and moral stimulation in a desert in so many ways, or what could have been a desert. So thanks, Joseph, for doing this and for letting freeloaders like me show up for this after show.
And this is Deborah, where I get to say to you and and to Ben that you are welcome to Zoom bomb the after show any day. We do this pretty much every day, and weekdays, and these. It almost sounds cliched. Bob Farnham will tell you this, that these after shows are just, each one just blows me away in terms of the things we discuss. And the conversations, they're just so meaningful and so real.
I love it when a guest has asked a question of us and the brain trust of all of us sort of peppers them with answers, and you can see them like taking notes. So the value to the experience of being
I'm taking notes.
Yeah,
right.
I got my notes,
for real.
So I was a guest, Deborah, about 2 months ago, who just refuses to go away. And I can't tell you how much I've learned. I did 2 PhDs at Yale, and I don't think I learned there in 2 months what I've learned here. So it's been great.
Awesome. Oh, that's so great. I love it. That's how we're creating new communities. It's true. I love it.
Absolutely.
Deborah, I live in Vermont with 629,999 other people. And one of the
And
things
he knows all of them.
just about, or they know me one way or the other. But quickly, I just wanted to put a bug in your ear that Vermont is a small state. And yet we are doing some very cool things. In Montpelier, the state capital, there's an organization that is trying to solve the transportation problems for a community and trying to figure out what that means. And does it mean a car in every driveway, or does it mean a micro transit system? What does it mean? And so they've been trying all different kinds of things, from those little electric scooters that they put in town, and they did a test and they get a lot of data out of it. And transportation in these communities around here is changing, and people are grasping the idea that maybe I don't want to own the vehicle itself. What I want to do is get a subscription to solve my transportation problems. And so what I'm helping amplify is these organizations that are putting together different ways of moving us and our things around. And so I wonder about companies like GM, who has the resources and the audience. I challenge you to think about being in the transportation business rather than in the vehicle business. The vehicle can still be autonomous and all that, but imagine it being used in places where it allows people to just buy a subscription for the year. For every 10,000 miles, they have to buy another token, whatever.
Yeah.
But
well, let me tell you, Bob, thank you for that question, because we've been experimenting like mad on that. We were the first ones to launch a subscription program called Book by Cadillac. Cadillac launched it. Tried that. We had a company called Maven, which actually supplied that in different things. What's that?
That's Maven. That's Maven.
yeah.
I wrote it.
Yeah.
I wrote about it. I'm aware of it. Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. So the biggest challenge, though, is we haven't figured out the financial model yet, and that's why all of these programs are struggling. So,
well,
but I'm convinced that customers want multimodal transportation options. So we're going to keep working at it. It's going to take a lot of investment and experimentation, but
so here's the bug in your ear, Vermont.
Okay.
And I'm only saying that because there are multiple communities around. There's Montpelier, there's Burlington, South Burlington, Middlebury, you got a college there. There are communities, Brattleboro, that could sustain testing models to try things. And they're small enough so that people and Vermonters, they'll tell you what they think.
Yeah, they will.
Right? So it's a cheap
they just
place
did
to do
You
testing.
need that transparency thing. Yeah, exactly. Love it. Thank you, Bob. Appreciate that.
Well, Bob, I tell you what, we'll make a deal with you. You keep your state green for a little bit longer, and when the other states are not. And no, I'm kidding.
Yeah,
but,
it's something. No, it's serious. We have an issue with that right now. Real estate people from outside of here have sold their homes and they're moving to Vermont, and they're going, "Wow, it's only $250,000 for that house. That would cost us $2 million in San Francisco."
Yeah,
not in San Francisco, but we have the water.
I spent
and Ben's Ben and Jerry's ice cream.
I have to shut us down because I have to go phone bank and do my civic duty as well. But I want to.
Love it.
It's been fun, and I feel like it's worthwhile. So I just want to thank Ben, and I want to thank Deborah. It's funny how everything just exploded, with everyone, getting involved and getting excited about it. But I think it's because of this beautiful foundation you set for us today. So just want to thank you, and don't be a stranger, and good luck. I believe your presentation is pre-recorded, right?
Yes, thank God.
Yeah, no.